Central Bank of Nigeria directs banks to apply I&E rates to PAPS transactions. NESD's recommendations being implemented across all sectors, says Agba. Senate concludes debate on 2022 budget and transparency needed to address rising debt amongst developing countries, says the World Bank. Details of these and more on Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we're reaching you live from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I'm Leah Katun Baba Tunde. A very good morning to you, and we'll start by informing you that the World Bank Group says a comprehensive approach, swifter restructuring as well as transparency is needed to address rising debts amongst developing countries. The group's president, David Malpass, stated this virtually at the opening press conference of the ongoing annual World Bank and the International Monetary Fund meetings in Washington, D.C.
New systems to push that along because so many countries are in external debt distress or at high risk of it. We need a comprehensive approach, including debt reductions. Core to making progress on that is improving the private sector capabilities of countries, working with governments to identify the strengthening that could be done that brings in new investment. And a chunk of that new investment.
The Minister of State, Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, says the federal government is implementing key recommendations from the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, in order to build a robust economy. The minister stated these in a press conference ahead of the Nigeria 27th Economic Summit tagged Securing the Future, the Urgency of Now in Abuja. Agba, while noting that the conference is taking place at a time that requires stakeholders from both public and private sector to come together to build economic prosperity, he added that the recommendations of the 26th edition of the Nigeria Economic Summit has been forwarded to the Federal Executive Council and subsequently to ministries, departments and agencies of government for full implementation. After 2 days of debate on the general principles of the 2022 Appropriations Bill, the Senate has passed it for second reading. The legislators emphasized on the expansion of railway lines across states, improved revenue generation, and adequate remittances into government coffers.
Goods and services along the corridors of our transportation nodes are very key to economic sustainability.
Most of our committees, honestly, are not being very effective in their role of oversighting MDAs.
We should diversify our economy, go into agriculture holistically.
I want to appeal to this Senate that we should look at the health sector and provide more funds for the health sector to add more value to it.
To go into as much of mechanized agriculture as possible and give all forms of incentives to those who are willing to go into that area.
It is important that we actually make proper allocations to the power sector.
But when the railway lines take all our goods, the roads will be light and they will last long.
Sustaining the trajectory of infrastructure development, improving revenue generation and power supply, among others, took center stage at the House of Representatives, where the debate for the 2022 budget proposal commences.
The issue of agriculture, which is one of the major and key cardinal principles of this administration, Mr. Speaker, has also taken chunks of these resources to be invested in the 2022 appropriation bill.
This is a budget that is responsible and responsive to the yearnings and concerns of gender and the vulnerable group in our society. We are ready to help Nigerian people to move forward.
It's in this country now that we are seeing that at least budgets are being implemented 100%.
That provision in the budget that is commendable is a statutory transfer to the National Agency for Science and Engineering Infrastructure.
Now, away from the budget, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has ordered banks to apply exchange rates in the investors and exporters (RNE) window for outbound payments through the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System (PAPS). The CBN disclosed this in a circular introducing the guidelines on operations of PAPS in Nigeria, signed by the Director, Trade and Exchange Department, CBN, Dr. Ozomena Naji. The circular reads in part that exports proceeds repatriated to CBN under PAPS shall be subjected to certification by respective processing banks as being repatriated by the exporter. The provisions of all existing guidelines, circulars and directives on the operations of foreign exchange markets shall apply. For the avoidance of doubt, only eligible transactions as may be determined by the CBN from time to time shall be eligible for payments and PAPS. Items classified not valid for foreign exchange shall remain ineligible. End of quote. PAPS is the first centralized payment market infrastructure for intra-African trade and commerce payments processing, clearing and settlements. The Afrexim Bank established it in collaboration with the West African Monetary Institute, WAMI. System PAPS, which was rolled out recently, is our focus today. And I have joining me virtually from Cairo, John Bosco Sababi, Deputy CEO of PAPS, and of course he'll be throwing more light on this new digital payment solution. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you, Leah. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. PAPS, now, what does it mean to the average African and how will it ease the problem of cross-border transactions?
Thank you, Leah, and let me tackle this in a way that, let me look at how the average African is going through in terms of sending transactions or sending payments across the borders. Today, as we talk, before sending out a transaction, a cross-border transaction, whether to Africa or outside Africa, one has to go through a couple of steps. One, they have to solicit for hard currency, either a dollar or a euro. Two, they have to go through correspondent banking, which could be 2 or 3 banks along the way. And 3, there's a little bit of a high cost on that. So PAPS comes in to be able to enable the traders paying local currencies, therefore reducing the need to solicit for hard currency to be able to effect a transaction. And 2, it brings in the instant payment, which is the product that will ensure that payments are received within seconds. The infrastructure enables us to effect this transaction in 120 seconds maximum. However, of late, we've seen that the transactions we've done have averaged 7 seconds, less than 10 seconds. So PAPS comes in to make sure it's an advantage, to bring the advantages to the average African in form of reducing the delays and ensuring that transactions are done in the local currency.
So people will be wondering, are we as a continent actually technologically sound to deliver on these, or do we need more infrastructure in that regard?
The infrastructure that has been, PAPS as an infrastructure is an enabling rails, and is based on the highest standards in terms of the payment industry. But I'll look at this in two ways. I look at it in terms of operations and in terms of the technology security itself. One, PAPS as a system ensures instant payments in a couple of seconds, as we just seen above, in average less than 10 seconds, and is designed not to go beyond 120 seconds. Now, in terms of security, PAPS runs on the ISO 20022 standards, which is the latest and latest technology in terms of security protocols in the payment industry. And also it's got an end-to-end encryption from between each participant. And likewise, to ensure that it offers maximum security and also ensure the integrity of messages between participants and PAPS, there's an exchange of the digital certificates from each participant with PAPS. So those ensure that there is maximum security. However, I could also mention that there are a couple of challenges that are there and happened within the implementation phase. For instance, some of the infrastructures of central banks and other participants have been put in place several years ago, and we had to do some kind of upgrades to make sure that it always come into play. So yes, the gaps are there in terms of the infrastructures that have to be upgraded, and also have to be mindful of the cyber security, and perhaps has come in with standards to be able to mitigate that.
So what's the level of awareness for the people on the continent?
PAPS is a central bank centric, and it's been cooperated by central banks. So at the level of central banks, awareness has been created. Financial institutions all over Africa have been made aware, and it has been endorsed at the highest level of the AU heads of state as a payment system for Africa. Now, that said, when we carry out interviews like this, when we are out rolling out in the media, is to create awareness for the system. It has just been launched about a couple of weeks ago, so we are on the road to do this, to ensure that awareness is raised so that the end user can be able to benefit.
Okay, so talking about the end users now, really for most of us, the question will be, how does it work? Do I go to just any bank, or I will have to pass through any deposit money bank now or financial institution, or I would have to go to the central bank of my country?
How does PAPS work? PAPS works through, let me take an example. If I'm sending you money from Cairo to Nigeria, I guess you're based in Nigeria, I will go to my bank. I'll use any channel that communicates with my bank. It could be a mobile platform, it could be an app on my phone, on my computer, or anywhere, and communicate with my bank. And then I will give an instruction to my bank to send money to you. Now, the only thing the bank will have to do is to make sure that what I'm going to send covers the bill that you've issued to me, or the invoice, and then the bank sends a message to PAPS. PAPS blocks that amount of money from the bank's accounts to earmark it as a payment that's going to be done. It straight away communicates to the bank of the recipient, to your bank in Abuja or in Lagos, and then your bank will do the checks. When your bank confirms that you are able to receive this money, you are eligible to receive this money, they'll communicate back to PAPS, and then PAPS will send the payment through to your bank, and your bank will deliver it to you and send you a message to inform you that you received the payment from Bosco, and they will inform me also, my bank will inform me that your payment instruction has been done and is concluded. All this happens in seconds. It's been designed that can happen in 120 seconds, but of late we've seen that after the launch and the go live, that these transactions are actually being done in less than 10 seconds.
So let me ask you a very, very Nigerian question. These transactions now, are they going to come in digital form, or there will be the normal paper currency form? And of course, is it the currency you send that the recipient will be getting, or the recipient will be getting the local currency in the country of residence?
The payments are done in, they do originate in local currency, in say the Egyptian pound, and you receive the Nigerian naira. What the bank and the central banks are going to do is to ensure that they look at there is exchange rate to ensure that you get what you actually billed for. So the PAPS ensures that payments are originated in local currencies of the sender and received in the local currency of the recipient.
Is it functional now? If it is, in how many countries on the continent, and what is the commitment by states?
PAPS is functional now. I'll take a step back and describe how PAPS started and the rationale behind it. Probably it's well known anyway. PAPS, one of the principles to implement PAPS, to start to operate PAPS, was based on the fact that we had pilots in a sample region that represents the rest of Africa. The rest of Africa is based on, has 54, probably about a couple of currencies, about 54 regulators, and also is multilingual in terms of the language that we use. We use English, French, and Portuguese in many cases, and also Arabic, or in some cases. So we chose a region that is kind of representative of the whole of Africa, and this was the West African Monetary Zone. Now, PAPS is operational here. We launched it this month. Live transactions have happened between the central banks in this region, and therefore it is operational in the 6 countries of WAMZ. In terms of rolling out elsewhere, in terms of because it's been a successful pilot, the platform is ready to be launched elsewhere in Africa, and we are talking to regional payment systems, national payment systems, and maybe here I may reiterate one thing, that PAPS is not here as a competitor. PAPS is here as an enabler of the regional systems, national systems, to talk to the other national systems or the other regional payment systems. So PAPS comes in to facilitate and enhance the already existing regional systems that have been put in place, which I must commend the regions that they've done a very good job. A very good job that almost all the 8 regions we have in Africa have got a payment system. So PAPS comes in not to compete with them, not to uproot them, but to compete with, not to compete with them, but to enhance and collaborate to be able to make sure that they coordinate and they do transactions with the rest of the other regions of Africa.
Now, so the AFCFTA, how will these reduce bottlenecks that have been spotted in the build-up, and how will these facilitate trade transactions cross-border across the continent?
It comes down to the principles of PAPS, of being able, having the ability to issue a payment in local currencies, because these have been the hurdles in Africa today, where business people go through the hurdles of soliciting for a hard currency to be able to trade amongst each other. And we must mention that transactions today are settled and cleared outside Africa, which introduces delays. There's a lot of work being done in terms of increasing intra-African trade by the ACFTA, because ACFTA was created to increase intra-African trade. Now, by instituting a couple of things, however, the PAPS comes in now to ensure that those trades that are occurring can move quicker and seamless.
I must sincerely thank you, Mr. John Bosco Sebabi, the Deputy CEO of PAPS, for joining us on Business Express.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, John Bosco. There, every business owner has a story to tell about surviving COVID-19 and sometimes even thriving through the challenge. Morenike Ajayi is a boutique owner, and she caps her experiences put together by Nekaoko.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Initially, business was booming, but for the last, since after this lockdown, things has not ever been like before again. It has been so terrible that even people, what they are looking for now is how to eat, what to put in their stomach. So people no longer patronizes us the way they used to do. Before COVID, I used to have 2 sales girls, but 3 sales girls rather. But now I only have 1, and I managed to even pay her salary. And I don't want to sack her. I don't want her to go. Because where will she start from again? So I was thinking maybe government were going to assist us, but nothing. I even applied on the website on my phone. I saw it, I applied, but I did not get a dime. Nothing. Because I filled the form. So I borrowed money from microfinance bank. Then I paid interest. And business is not booming. So it's a very difficult task for me. If given assistance, I will appreciate. At least I will use the money to stock my shop, buy things, and maybe from there I can pick up by the grace of God. So COVID has taught me how to plan for the future, how to save, at least cut down unnecessary expenses.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
And moving on, gold prices hovered near a 1-month peak on Thursday. Let's now take a trip to the commodities market. Investors gained 80.36 billion naira on Wednesday as the NSE index inched up further by 0.38% to maintain positive posture. Outside home, Asia Pacific stocks rose on Thursday session.
Global markets are digesting the latest U.S. inflation data, which rose higher than expected in September, increasing pressure on the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise rates sooner rather than later. U.S. stock futures were higher early Thursday morning after the S&P 500 snapped a 3-day losing streak as companies kicked off the quarterly earnings season. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures jumped 156 points. S&P 500 futures and Nasdaq 100 futures also traded in positive territory. European stocks opened higher on Thursday, with investors around the world reflecting on the latest inflation data and earnings out of the U.S. The pan-European stock 600 added 0.7% in early trade, with basic resources jumping 2.1% to lead gains as all sectors and major bourses entered positive territory. Asia-Pacific stocks were higher in Thursday trade as investors reacted to the release of China's inflation data for September. Nikkei was 1.46% high at 28,550.93%. The Shanghai Composite in mainland China declined 0.10%, while the Hong Kong Hang Seng Index still unchanged due to the cancellation of a typhoon warning alert, according to Hong Kong Exchange release at noon yesterday. Meanwhile, African markets are yet to post figures as at the time of this report. Boss Sede Able, Business Express.
Thank you, Bosse. And of course, this is where we end this edition of Business Express. We value feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTA's channel. Business Express returns Friday at 3 p.m. I'm Leah Katung. Bye-bye, Tunde.